When people talk about AI security, the conversation usually starts with prompts. Like, can someone jailbreak the model? Can they manipulate the responses? Can they bypass the safeguards? Those are definitely the important questions. But have you ever thought if those are the questions you should to be asking in the first place? Because in the real world, AI doesn't operate as just a model. It connects to users, data, APIs, tools, and business systems. And that's where the bigger risks often exist. So before we talk about attacks, defenses, or compliance, we need to understand one thing. What does a production AI system actually look like? Because once you see the full picture, you'll realize AI security is much bigger than prompts. Let's get started.
So folks, this framework and detailed AI security assessment is borrowed from Luis Santana. I found this course to be very useful, and the frameworks and the detailing that's there is amazing. So I'll walk you through each step by steps to give you detailed insights. So now this is a framework that gives you details on right from prompt injection to RAG to agents and to the governance. Okay, so it's going to give you quite a detailed insights. So folks, if you see that you have users and then you have applications. So the applications are typically connected to something called as RAG. Now, why do you need RAG? You need RAG to bring in more context to the organization. Okay. Now the RAG is connected to your vector DB. Basically, all your own personal data or your company's confidential data will get transported into your vector DB, and typically it's connected to some kind of a tool, and then it gives you more contextual memory. So all that session memories and all the data that you use for your ChatGPT or Claude or any other AI gets into some kind of memory. So all of this collectively needs to be secured, right? So therefore, we are going to go deep dive into securing this entire piece. So firstly, what all we'll cover here today, folks. So we are going to cover scope and architecture of what AI systems look like. We will talk about data exposure. We will talk about RAG and document security. We will also be talking about memory security, folks, which is very interesting, and there are very less videos on this topic. Then we will talk about agent and tool security. Earlier we had ChatGPTs and more front-end applications of Claude and Gemini, but today these are more agentic. So agentic systems are connected with some kind of tool or an MCP server. So how do you secure them? How do you secure, again, prompt injection? So folks, we are going to talk about how do you really secure mission critical applications. So if you see, by the time security teams are engaged, by the time the AI security folks are engaged, the production has already gone live. This is a typical scenario, right? So your AI system might be already connected to documents, to API, to tools, to customer data, to pipelines and external, right? And folks, this creates a new business risk, right? So the risk involves typically, your data exposure, the risk involves excessive application access, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, if you see, today you have in your environment, you have users, you have data, you have tools, you have infrastructure and business. That typically involves user and external, you have pipelines, access control, monitoring, APIs, and so on and so forth. So folks, we need to secure this entire application stack. Okay, remember, we want to secure this entire stacks, folks. It's not about securing one component, but collectively securing all these components. All right, now let's move ahead. Now, why AI security is too late? Now, typically what happens in any environment, you will have somebody ideating the product, right? Your product development team, your product owner would be discussing with the customers and developing some idea, right? And then they do faster prototyping, right? And then they do internal testing, which could be UAT testing or application testing or load testing or performance testing. And then they put this in production. And then finally, somebody comes to you and then talk about really doing the security review. Right? That's how it goes today. And that needs to be changed. The absolute correct approach is you need to have an idea. You need to talk about architecture review. You need to do threat modeling as to what risk these APIs, exposures, and the AI brings in. You need to talk about what are the controls that we need to build. We need to test it and then go live with production. Now, this is the new approach, right? Now, as we know that since AI is today connected with your enterprise data, it is connected to tools, it connects it to API, RAG, all of this. It's very important that the security teams are engaged much ahead of time. They should be engaged when there is actually an architecture review, or maybe when somebody is doing prototyping, right? So, at an executive level, you should be bothered about these three. What does AI system can access? What data it can expose? What action it can trigger? What third-party services it depends on? And how failures would impact business? Now, your technical team that consists of your technical architecture, your security architect teams should be reviewing the AI architecture, the model provider, the prompt flow, the RAG pipeline, the vector database, tools, access control, memory behavior, logging, and deployment. You see, folks, when you look at this holistically, that's when you really get a detailed understanding of how you do a security assessment framework. Okay. So, most of the AI security failures do not start with a model, folks. They start when security teams are invited way too late. So when the party is over, these folks come in, and then what you see is a breach. Now we will talk about the AI production system. So AI production system consists of various components. Okay, it's not just a model. It is connected, as I said, with users, with data, with documents, with API, tools, and a lot more, right? So if you see a human interaction, now typically human interaction, how does a human or a user interacts with AI? They would typically do with some chat or co-pilots, portals, apps, or APIs, right? It will be programmatic access or a non-programmatic. So you have first is what you have user layer, right? Then you have application layer. Now application layer, folks, consist of business logic, authentications, sessions, prompts, templates, and orchestration. Now your data layer, which is where your data sits, right, and resides. So you have your knowledge base, you have embeddings, your data that converts into vector embedding, you have retrieval pipelines, right? So that's your data layer. Then you have your model layer, folks. And you might have heard about a lot of models. So you have self-hosted model, it could be private model, it could be fine-tuned model, different models you can download from a lot of places. Now, you have tools and integration. That's where the major security risk is, folks, because now what's happening is you're connecting, let's say if you want to do an AI workflow, you want to connect your models with a certain application. Let's say it's SAP. If you want to connect to SAP, the SAP integrations, the access that the AI or model will have, the kind of layers of requirements that integration would have is something that is very important to take note of. So that's when your tools and integration layer comes in. And then you have memory layer. Now what is memory layer with respect to AI? Now those are all the conversations. So folks, whenever you have any conversation with your chat GPTs or it could be a window or an API, all of that gets logged somewhere, right? That conversation, because it needs to know those persistent memory, right? It will need to know what you've spoken about to give you more swift and more accurate response, right? There is some semantic memory and long-term memory, right? So long-term memory, your preferences, the data, all of that understanding is all your memory layer, right? So something that the AI would learn and respond to you with certain information. Okay, so all of this is something that we need to do, which is your memory layer. And then governance and monitoring. So AI is not just once, right? You have to do governance and you need to do monitoring across the board, right? Always, periodically, daily, right? It's not just one-time activity. So now we'll move to the next cohort, which is our AI attack surface. Now, what is AI attack surface? By now, a production system, basically, if you see, expands the traditional application. Now, today, folks, before AI, you would have got your traditional application landscape. Now, that landscape suddenly changed because the attackers would not only attack your applications, but now they will also attack your models, right? So they may target your data, the prompts, the memories, the APIs, the infrastructure, right, with your GPUs. And therefore, folks, you need to have a complete understanding of what you need to protect. So, folks, you need to protect your input surface, which is your prompts, PDF, your knowledge surface, where your document lies. You need to do reasoning surface, which is system prompts, prompt templates, agentic logic, and orchestration. You need to also secure execution surface, which is tools and APIs and workflows and code execution. The memory surface, the semantic memory, the long-term memory. Infrastructure, it could be CI/CD pipeline, it could be GPUs, it could be your infrastructure. And the output surface, folks, where it could be text, SQL, HTML, and reports. So, folks, AI security assessment must follow an end-to-end path. The input, retrieval, reasoning, action, memory, and output. All of this, folks, needs to be taken. So AI security is not a model-only problem. It is a full stack attack surface problem.
So if there's one thing I'd like you to remember from this episode, it's this. The model is only one part of the system. Real AI security is about everything around it. The users, the data, the tools, the integrations, and every connection that allows AI to do something useful. Because attackers aren't looking for prompts alone, they're looking for the easiest path through the entire system. And that's exactly why AI security often starts too late. Now that we've looked at the full AI landscape, the next question becomes even more important. What happens when sensitive data starts moving through these systems? And where can that data be exposed without anyone noticing? We'll explore that in the next episode. I'll see you next one. Till then, keep learning, keep exploring, and stay curious.